It's now time for Ask the Expert with Auger Hollingsworth. Hey, phone in your questions. You can see the information on your screen, 613-789-6559, extension 2803. You can also tweet at us or send us a message on Facebook as well at CTV Ottawa Morning Live. We are talking to Brenda Hollingsworth this morning. She's a personal injury lawyer, and she's got you covered here. Good morning to you, Brenda.
Good morning.
Okay, so Brenda, I've got this scenario for you. Here you go. You've fallen on a city sidewalk in the suburbs and broken your wrist. So the sidewalk had a layer of ice covered by drift of snow. So you don't think there was any salt or sand applied. But yesterday, it was, about 5 degrees. But overnight, the temperatures plummeted, went down to like -9, and then there was like a flash freeze. So what should you do? Do you have a case against the city if you fall, break your wrist, and you slipped on some ice that was actually covered by snow?
Right. So there's a lot in that question.
Yeah.
The first thing you're going to have to do is talk to a lawyer. This is not the kind of thing that you can just decide on your own. Different parts of municipalities have different rules for what has to happen on a sidewalk. So a downtown sidewalk is going to have a different set of rules than a suburban sidewalk. And there's going to be a different timeline for how fast the city has to act and what they have to do. So, for example, a downtown sidewalk on Elgin Street in Ottawa, they're probably going to have it cleared down to bare pavement. Whereas in the suburbs, they can have it snow-packed. So lots of different rules. A lawyer can let you know what those are. In terms of notice, you want to let the city know within 10 days of that fall that you've had an injury and where that injury happened. Really important with city cases. That's basically it. A broken wrist is an objective injury. It has a dollar value. If it keeps you from being able to work, you will also have some compensation for that.
Brenda, I'm just wondering if that does happen to someone and they are looking for help, legal help, but they're on a fixed income. I mean, how can they seek legal help without having to shell out a lot of money?
Well, most of the time, personal injury lawyers work on what's called contingency. So we don't get paid unless the case is successful. One of the things that means is that we evaluate cases pretty carefully. So we can't take every case because we only get paid if we win. But generally speaking, there's no upfront costs. And even if the case is unsuccessful, we just write off our time. So it's risk-free.
Okay. Now, should a client be relatively optimistic if you do take them on for a personal injury case, because you must have done your due diligence and figured that this is a pretty strong case?
Yeah, that's a really good point. We only take cases we think we can win. I mean, sometimes we don't have all the facts at the beginning, right? So if we got the documents from the city and it turns out that they did salt exactly when they were supposed to, and you just couldn't see it, okay, then that might change our assessment. But we, and all personal injury lawyers, will keep you up to date on stuff like that. And if we think the risk of the case has changed, we'll tell you. But yeah, generally speaking, if we accept your case, we believe we're going to be successful.
Hey, Brenda, something like that happens, a fall, a broken wrist. Should you take pictures? I mean, what do you do? I mean, you've got a broken wrist. You got to get to the clinic to get patched up. But this fall happened in this space. Do you need to take pictures to make sure that the evidence is there on top of the broken wrist?
The very best thing you can do is take pictures. Okay. If you take pictures, your case will be so much stronger. Generally speaking, if you've got good pictures that show what you've described, I would say you have 100% higher chance of getting top dollar for your case. So I know you're absolutely right. You're injured. It's difficult, but send a friend, send a neighbor. If you call the lawyer right away, the lawyer could go. Because with weather-related slips and falls like this one, a day could make a difference, right? If it rains the next day, then pictures, you still want pictures, but pictures aren't going to have the same value. But absolutely, if you can take a picture. The other thing is you need to preserve your shoes. If your shoes are relevant or your boots are relevant, so you want to take pictures of your boots, including the tread. If you know when you bought them, like if you have the charge on your credit card or your debit statement, try to identify it so we know how old your boots are and what they look like. Your boots don't have to be perfect, but if they are perfect, it helps.
We're continuing our discussion on Ask the Expert with Auger Hollingsworth. You can phone in your questions. We're talking about slip and fall. What are your legal rights to compensation? You can reach out to us on Facebook. We're at CTV Ottawa Morning Live. Brenda Hollingsworth is a personal injury lawyer with Auger Hollingsworth, and we're going to continue that conversation. Brenda, thanks for sticking around. Okay, so Brenda, I got another scenario for you. Here we go. You are a year-round cyclist. You are traveling on a roadway without a bike path. A car passes so close to you that it runs you off the road, although it does not make contact with you. Now, you've shattered your collarbone. Do you have a case, and what should you do?
Right. So we've had this scenario or several variations of this scenario, and this is a tricky one because car didn't hit you, so people think there's nothing they can do about it, but that's not true. Obviously, medical safety is the number one thing, and a broken collarbone is very painful. So, you do your best in the circumstances. You definitely want the police to come and maybe an ambulance, but you definitely want the police to come to this scenario because you want them to do an investigation. You've got potentially, maybe the car stops, maybe it doesn't. If it doesn't stop, you want to have called the police so that there's a record that you were run off the road. Hopefully, even if the car didn't stop, somebody else stops, because one of the things about accidents with unidentified drivers is you usually have to have corroboration. You have to have something to back up your statement that there was an unidentified car involved in the accident. So you are taking witness information. That is vitally important. Get them to text you so that you have their contact information for later on. It's going to make all the difference in your case. Now, with a cycling accident, this is very weird for people, but your own car insurance is going to pay you accident benefits. So your car that's parked in your garage while you're on your bike, that insurance policy is going to cover your no-fault benefits. So things like an income replacement if you need it, medical rehab, they're going to pay for your physio, they're going to pay for chiro. If you need psychological help because of the trauma, they're going to pay for that. So you want to apply for accident benefits through your own insurance company. Now, if you're a hardcore cyclist, you don't own a car, your first choice is to use the insurance of the car that hit you. So if you have that information, that's great. If you don't have that information, there's a public fund available for accident benefits. So you're going to want to talk to a lawyer about that. And then in terms of the hit and run accident, or if it is a hit and run or a non-hit and run, a veer off the road and run, if you have your own insurance, you have coverage for that too. You have unidentified motorist coverage under your own insurance policy. And so a lawyer can help you navigate that.
So Brenda, is it difficult to tap into that public fund if you don't have insurance, you don't have car insurance, and the driver is gone?
Yeah, I won't say it's the easiest thing in the world. I wouldn't try it without a lawyer. The one thing about the public fund is that they are real sticklers to make sure that there's no other insurance policy available. So it's not that they won't pay, they will, but they make you go through a lot of steps to make sure that you have explored every option to have the claim covered by a real insurance company. So having a lawyer help you do that would make a big difference.
Brenda, what's the timeline here? Are we talking months or even longer before you receive word or any kind of compensation?
It shouldn't be many months. I mean, for compensation for your pain and suffering, that's a lawsuit. That could be a while, right? Sometimes if liability is obvious, if the car stopped and admits it got too close to you and you've got an objective injury like a collarbone fracture, sometimes we can settle those fairly promptly. We do often settle just directly with the insurance company, but more often than not, those claims take a while, like months to years. But the accident benefits, the no fault benefits, they should activate almost immediately. If you have your own policy, they will activate immediately. Or if you live with someone who has a policy, they should activate immediately. But the fund will definitely take longer. But it should be months, not years.
Brenda, can you talk about some of the things that you really should not do if you get yourself you're in a situation where the car doesn't actually hit you, but you're run off the road, you've injured yourself? What are some of the things that really you should not do so as to that you don't want to delay the case in any way, shape, or form?
Well, the biggest problem we have with cycling injuries generally is I've never been thankfully hit as a cyclist or had an accident as a cyclist, but I gather the adrenaline runs pretty high and people underestimate their injury. I mean, you're probably not going to underestimate a broken collarbone, but often people do have pretty significant injuries, but they need to get out of the road and their adrenaline's pumping, and they don't bother to call the police. They don't bother to get witness names. It's really, really important in any cycling accident, especially one where the driver doesn't stop. So not taking the time or thinking you're okay, and then leaving the scene and realizing that really, really hurts your case. The other thing that hurts any personal injury case is not getting prompt medical attention. You want to either make an appointment with your family doctor, go to the ER, go to a walk-in clinic as soon as possible. Some people have regular physiotherapists or chiropractors. That's fine. Go to that if it makes you feel better, but that's no substitute for going to a doctor. It's not going to help you in your case later on to say, yeah, well, I went to my physiotherapist. You got to go to a doctor. And I know right now that's difficult, right? Where there's backlogs and everything, but at least make the appointment. And then you can say, if you're asked later on, I called the day of my accident and I didn't get an appointment for a week. That's better than, 4 or 5 weeks later having your first doctor's encounter.
If you want to reach out to Auger Hollingsworth, there's their information on the screen. Their email information is there. Phone number 613-233-4529. And you can look them up on the World Wide Web at ahinjurylaw.com. We're going to continue our conversation with Brenda Hollingsworth. She's a personal injury lawyer with Auger Hollingsworth. Brenda, I have another scenario for you. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. You own a small 2-unit rental property. Your main floor tenant has agreed to shovel and salt the walkway in return for a small rent reduction. You don't go to the property very often and have no idea if the tenant does a good job. Then you get a letter in the mail telling you a visitor to the property fell and is suing you for her injuries. What should the property owner do?
Right. So this applies to really anybody who owns property, whether you live there or you are a landlord. You are ultimately responsible for the condition of that property. In Ontario, we're governed by something called the Occupiers Liability Act that makes it important and, in fact, mandatory that you keep your property safe for people coming on, even trespassers. So number one, you probably are responsible. Now you've delegated the task of maintaining the walkway, the roadway, the sideway, the driveway to somebody else. So haven't you discharged your duty? You have delegated. Well, there is law that says that you can delegate, and that gets you off the hook as long as you supervise, right? So you can't just hope they do a good job. You have to inspect. You have to make sure that they are competent. You have to hire a competent person to do it, and you're going to have to prove that you somehow did some due diligence. So the bottom line is the tenant might be responsible, but you might also be responsible. And chances are, as the property owner, you're going to have deeper pockets than the tenant, meaning you're going to have a better insurance policy and you're going to have more personal assets that mean that the target of the lawsuit is probably going to be you. They may name the tenant, but probably it's going to come down to you. So when you're hiring someone to do maintenance on your property, you want to make sure that you hire a reputable business, that you have a written contract setting out what the expectation is. You want to make sure that you check it out and you're able to truthfully say that you monitor, that you check in with that contractor to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, that they haven't run into any problems. So all of those things are your responsibility as a property owner.
Okay, Brenda, can we flip this around and it's the individual who slipped on the property? And how does that move forward if they're looking for some sort of compensation?
Right now, this instance is on private property. So this person would have 60 days to give notice. And the notice requirement is that you give notice to someone. So most often it is the property owner, because that's the easiest thing to find out. If I know that you slipped and fell at 123 Main Street, I can look up doing a property search to see who owns that property. So if you come to me for help with notice, I can do that for you, and probably the notice I'm going to send is going to be to the owner of the property. So that's the most important thing, is trying not to miss that 60-day notice period. There are exceptions. There are ways to get around that 60-day notice period, but why would you, right? If you are injured, let's just take that off your shoulders and get that notice in. Same thing that we talked about on the municipal sidewalk. A picture is, we say a picture is worth thousands of dollars instead of thousands of words. Pictures really make a difference in personal injury cases. So if you can send one to get a picture of what you slipped on, that's going to be really great. When you're looking at private property, there's the condition of sort of the snow, ice, etc. You're going to also want to take pictures that show, if there's a downspout that points to, where people walk and you think that might have contributed, or sometimes there's like a dip in cobblestone or just in pavement that creates a little place where water can pool. Try and look at the site critically to see if there's anything that will help show that there was a particular danger on the property. Anything like that makes a big difference. If we have to go back, if you come to us 6 or 8 months later, that's fine. We will probably still take your case because there's a 2-year limitation period. But your case will be stronger if you come to us with those photos, or if you come to us really early and we can get those photos. Photos are really important. Same thing about the shoes. You want to make sure that you preserve your shoes. And just because, you're not wearing winter boots, it's not game over. Stilettos, we have a hard time defending stilettos on icy surfaces, but there is some recent case law that says or suggests that sort of the sexism behind saying that it's a man's shoe that is safe and a woman's shoe that isn't safe, some of that old case law is going out the window. So, just take pictures of your shoes, but we're not going to judge you by your shoes, and nobody may judge you by your shoes.
There you go. Brenda Hollingsworth, personal injury lawyer with Auger Hollingsworth. It's always great to talk to you and learn a little bit more about our rights and the different procedures that we need to go through in order to attain some sort of compensation. Once again, thank you so much, Brenda.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you on. Hey, if you want to reach out to Brenda at Auger Hollingsworth, she's a personal injury lawyer. There's the information on the screen. Info at ottawalawfirm.ca.